What's up guys, my name is Ace, and the Season 5 Reloaded update for Modern Warfare 3 is here, and with this we got a handful of weapon balancing, as well as various bug fixes and a couple other miscellaneous changes. So in today's video, we're going to be going through all of the important details that actually affect the gameplay for Modern Warfare 3's multiplayer. And let's just dive right into this since there's quite a bit to cover here. With the DG56 assault rifle, they increased our lower torso damage multiplier, so it matches our upper torso and arm multiplier now, so it's just going to be a little bit more consistent and a little more forgiving with its shots. Then for the BAS-B in full auto mode, they increased our upper leg, lower leg, and foot damage, and they mentioned in the patch notes, this is so shots that land below the waist now deal damage equal to those that hit the torso. However, in my testing, while there was a slight damage boost here, it doesn't match the torso damage entirely, and effectively speaking, this change doesn't really do anything to the BAS-B. It is worth noting, I also tested in semi-auto mode, and I didn't see any change there whatsoever, so it appears this was only meant to take place in full auto, and it didn't seem to fully apply to get that damage matching the torso damage. As for the next thing that was stated in the patch notes, with the MTZ-762, they mentioned they increased the maximum damage range from 29.2 meters up to 33 meters. However, interestingly, pre-patch, the maximum damage range wasn't 29.2 meters, it was 19.1 meters. And post-patch, it's still 19.1 meters. And I actually did the testing with this just to confirm that this wasn't a bug with the advanced stats. And in-game, our actual damage drop-off point with that maximum damage range in both full auto and semi-auto with this gun is still 19.1 meters, so nothing actually changed here. But then finally, in the battle rifle category, we got some actual changes here, and this is with the FTAC Recon. In semi-auto mode, they just reworked our damage profile a little bit. They basically just simplified this while buffing the damage ranges beyond that maximum damage range, and the range values also changed, even though that wasn't stated in the patch notes. We'll cover that in just a second. But first, let's have a look at the full auto changes as well, which it's a really similar story here. They removed one of our damage ranges, increased the range values overall, and this time we got a buff across the board to our damage values. So let's have a look at those damage range changes. And as we can see, that maximum damage range is significantly better now at 41.5 meters, whereas pre-patch it was just over 20 meters, so that's really impressive. And while in semi-auto mode, our 3-shot kill potential to the body isn't really increased by a ridiculous amount, it definitely is in full auto mode. It's nearly doubled. And on top of that, with those damage value changes, in full auto mode, in that maximum damage range, it's a guaranteed 3-shot kill anywhere in the body. And that time to kill potential is just 222 milliseconds, which makes the FTAC Recon a ridiculously powerful gun in this game now if you're using it in full auto. And I would highly recommend giving this a shot after this update because at least on paper, it looks like this is now an upper tier gun in this game. But that wraps it up for the battle rifle changes. When it comes to SMGs, surprisingly, there was only one change, and this was just a bug fix. With the Rival 9, when using the JAK Headhunter carbine kit, they fixed an issue that was preventing the Quartermaster suppressor from actually attaching to the gun. Like, you could put the attachment on, but it wouldn't actually apply to your gun, so you'd just be wasting your attachment slot. That should be working for you now. And then let's get into the LMG category, and the Pulemyot 762 got some pretty drastic changes. First off, to our handling stats, both our sprint to fire and aim down sight times were buffed, but more importantly, our rate of fire was increased from 492 rounds per minute up to 545 rounds per minute. And while they didn't adjust the recoil values themselves, since you increase the rate of fire, you are going to technically see higher recoil overall, and we can see that taking place here. And then it's also worth noting our time to kill potential is improved with this faster rate of fire. It went from 366 milliseconds down to 330 milliseconds, which is still not amazing, but it's a lot more competitive than it once was. Although you do have to keep in mind, this is excluding that 40 millisecond pre-fire delay with this gun. In general though, this should absolutely make the Pulemyot feel significantly better after this update. And I just want to mention as well, I did test with the conversion kit, and unfortunately this rate of fire buff didn't apply to the conversion kit, it only buffed the base version of this gun. Next up in the LMG category, although it's more like a sniper rifle, the JAK Cataclysm kit for the RPK, which converts it into a sniper, was nerfed in several ways, thankfully. So it's a little more like a sniper rifle. The first thing they did here is they nerfed our flinch resistance from 0.17 newtons up to 0.68 newtons. So you'll see significantly more flinch when you're shot now. However, it is still noticeably better than all of the other sniper rifles in the game. Then when it comes to hipfire, we had ridiculously good hipfire, like broken hipfire for a sniper rifle in this game pre-patch, whereas post-patch, they've just nerfed both our minimum and maximum hipfire values to be much more in line with what you'd expect with a sniper rifle. And then finally, with this kit, they very noticeably increased the recoil, and we can see pre-patch there really wasn't much recoil. It would recenter really nicely between shots, Whereas post-patch, it still recenters reasonably well, but there's significantly more visual recoil, which is going to make it significantly harder to track your enemies if you're trying to sort of spam shots at them. Although at the end of the day, just comparing the recoil plots themselves, post-patch isn't that much worse than pre-patch. It's still quite an accurate gun, even when spamming it. So that's it for the JAK Cataclysm kits, and honestly, these are some solid nerfs that just make it more in line with the other sniper rifles. I would still consider this to be better than many of the other sniper rifles in the game, but at least now it's not completely broken when it comes to the hipfire and flinch resistance. And with that out of the way, let's get into the marksman rifle category, and with the MCW 6.8, they increased our rate of fire from 316 rounds per minute up to 353 rounds per minute, which again, since we're seeing an increase to our rate of fire, we also technically see an increase to the amount of recoil we experience since there's less time between shots to recenter. And on top of that, we see an improvement to our time to kill. This went from 380 milliseconds to kill down to 340 milliseconds to kill. Now, I did also test this with the conversion kit, and the rate of fire did not change with that. It only applies to the base version of the gun. Additionally, with the MCW, they buffed our lower torso damage multiplier, so it now matches our upper torso and arm multiplier. Realistically, in the first 2 damage ranges, this isn't going to change anything meaningful. However, at longer ranges, this is where you may see a slight improvement to your consistency. And then finally, for the marksman rifle category, with the SPR 208, they removed the paracord grip as a compatible attachment on that. And this just leaves us with a handful of handgun changes, and all of these changes apply to the Modern Warfare 2 Akimbo attachment. Now, I'm not going to make graphics for every single one of these because then you wouldn't get the video till tomorrow, and realistically speaking, not many people are going to be using Akimbo on these anyway. But let's just go through these since some of these didn't actually appear to change despite the fact that they said they changed. And starting it off with the Akimbo P890, the hipfire spread was reduced by 20%, so our minimum hipfire spread went from 1.7 degrees down to 1.2 degrees. They also decreased our damage range penalty by 20%, and that did apply. For the 50 GS in Akimbo, they mentioned they decreased the hipfire spread by 10%, but based on what I'm seeing here, that didn't actually apply, at least not to our minimum and maximum values. Perhaps one of the other hipfire values was adjusted, but not our minimum and maximum. They also decreased our damage penalty by 10%, and that also applied, and this means we're capable of getting a 2-shot kill to the upper torso in the maximum damage range when using Akimbo. Then with the X12 Akimbo, they removed the hipfire spread penalty, and they removed our damage range penalty as well. With the Akimbo Basilisk, they mentioned a decrease to our hipfire spread, but again, I'm not seeing any changes there whatsoever. However, they also decreased the damage penalty, but that doesn't change the number of shots to kill to any parts of the body. With the FTAC Siege in Akimbo, they did decrease our hipfire spread by 20%, as well as our damage range penalty by 20%. With the GS Magna in Akimbo, they mentioned a hipfire spread improvement, but that didn't actually take place as far as I can tell. And it's actually the same story with our damage penalty. They mentioned they decreased this by 10%, but those damage values didn't change at all based on my testing. And it's actually the exact same story with the Akimbo 9mm Daemon. For both the hipfire spread as well as the damage penalty, neither of these values changed, despite the fact that it mentions the change in the patch notes. And this just leaves us with the Akimbo X13, and with this, we did actually see the changes apply to our hipfire spread and our damage range penalty. So overall, just know, at least with most of the Modern Warfare 2 pistols, if you're using them in Akimbo now, they should be at least a little bit better than they were pre-patch. These weren't massive buffs by any means, but they should make them at least a bit more viable. And that actually wraps it up for all of the weapon balancing that took place with this update. However, we saw a few additional changes here as well. The first one was to the Infantry vest. You guys might remember at the launch of Season 5, they added additional bonuses to nearly all of the vests, but the Infantry vest was left out of that. Now they've added an additional benefit to it, which is a second gear slot, so that's a very nice buff to the Infantry vest. Then when it comes to killstreaks, with the IMS, they increased the hitbox size of the explosives to further allow counterability, so you can actually shoot those explosives out of the air a bit easier now in order to counter the IMS. They also increased the enemy detection radius from 10.2 meters up to 12.7 meters, and they decreased the duration for explosives to reach its vertical apex from 2 seconds to 1.5 seconds. After that, for both the mortar strike and the carpet bomb, they just fixed an issue that prevented the announcer voice lines from acknowledging kills. And then finally, for the advanced UAV, for enemies that are using the Ghost TV camo or the Assassin vest, they will no longer show up as a red diamond on the minimap when you have an advanced UAV in the air. They're going to show up as a directional arrow just like everyone else. So they no longer provide any counterplay whatsoever to an advanced UAV after this patch. And there we go. That's finally going to wrap it up for all of the important gameplay changes that took place with the Season 5 Reloaded update when it comes to Modern Warfare 3 multiplayer at least. And this is where I'm curious to hear from you guys in those comments down below. How are you feeling about this patch so far? Are you generally liking the changes you're seeing here? Or not so much? Were there some changes you were really hoping to see that weren't included? Or are there maybe some changes in this that you just don't like? If you enjoyed this one, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.